Delighted to say that the first episode of the Willie Morgan Show is brought to you here on Football CFB. I'm your host, Callum McFadden, and without further ado, of course, I am joined by the legend that is Willie Morgan. First of all, Willie, how are you?
I'm very well, Callum. Very well indeed. The weather's beautiful down here in Manchester, and my golf's good, so I'm in good shape.
In terms of the golf, how good has it been for you to get back on the greens and get your practice in?
It's been great. I've been fortunate that I can go out and practice anytime. So my golf's good. I'm desperate not to say that because it's a kiss of death for any golfer. You know, how are you playing? I'm playing great, and then you duff the next shot. So no, things are good. Things are great here.
Sadly, start the show today with the news and the passing of Tony Dunn. I know you would like to pay tribute to Tony, a teammate of yours at Manchester United.
Yeah, he was a good friend. And first of all, obviously, condolences to his family. It must be difficult for them, especially in this time, you know, when you're locked down. Dunny, or TD, as we affectionately called him, was, in my opinion, one of the two greatest fullbacks in the world at the time, in the 60s. He was a fantastic player. He was one of the new fullbacks. He in the old days when I started playing, they were all thugs. I mean, they were all ugly, big thugs, but they were pretty slow, so you could do pretty much what you wanted to do. And then Tony Dunn and Ray Wilson came along, and they were smaller and they were very quick. So it was a different type of. You had to think of something different to beat them. So, and Tony was brilliant. I mean, I think he played over 500 games under Sir Matt Busby, but talks for itself. You know, he was just a great player and a proper fullback. In
terms of yourself being a winger, how important is it to have a proper fullback like Tony to allow you to express yourself to the max?
Well, the thing about those days, every team had two wingers. You know, obviously right winger, left winger, and every team had two fullbacks, not wing backs, who we always thought were failed wingers. So the wing back invented this new name, wing backs. Now, the old fullbacks were there to do a job. They were there to stop the wingers. And he was, I said, of that era, and he was just a great player. He was more difficult. I mean, most of the old ones I came up against, you know, when I made my debut in 1963, they were big, as I say, they were big, strong, and if they caught you, they would hurt you. But Tony was one of the smaller ones who came in the late 60s and was very quick, which was unusual for a fullback in those days. So it made life a little bit more difficult for people like me. But we found a way around it, Callum, as you do.
Absolutely, you certainly did. And one of the questions I want to ask you is about football returning. Football's on the way back. It started in Germany with the Bundesliga. The Premier League is returning next week, and the Football League won't be far behind it. What's your thoughts on football coming back, Willie?
Well, I think it's fantastic. I mean, it's been sadly missed. I mean, there's not a lot to do at the weekend. You're looking to look at a match and watch a match, and it's been obviously horrendous. No football at all. To play in front of empty stadiums, I don't know. That would be a weird experience. But if that's the way forward, so be it. You know, as long as they're safe. The main thing is for them to be safe. And hopefully, I mean, the sad thing, of course, that Liverpool will go on and win the league. All you Liverpool fans out there. But they deserve it. They've been the best team by miles this season or last season, whichever way you look at it. And they deserve it. So, yeah, it'd be great to get everybody back, everybody playing, but it'll also be great to get the fans back in the stadiums. And hopefully that will come maybe October, maybe September, October. With a bit of luck, we hope.
Absolutely, as you know, when you've got a crowd on your side, it's everything as a footballer on the park. And you mentioned Liverpool there in terms of winning the title. Just want to touch on some of your old clubs. First of all, Manchester United. Are you confident they can break into the top four this season under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer?
I've said when Ole came up, I think it's a great appointment, by the way. But it's a 5-year job just to get back to being contention. He's got to get rid of a lot of players. He's got a lot of very average, and I'm being kind, very average players. And he's got to get rid of them before he can bring people in. And it's going to be a hard job for him. But I think it's 5 years. You know, we're always going to be all right. We're always going to be up in the top 6, top 8. But to actually be up there to contend is going to take time. But hopefully, you know, he's going the right way, and he'll carry on and be there for a long time, I hope.
Another one of your former clubs in Burnley, doing really well this season in the Premier League, have been doing for a few years. They're looking to finish in the top 10. Just how proud are you when you look at where Burnley are now and the infrastructure that they've got?
Well, Burnley, you know, don't forget, when I joined Burnley as a 15-year-old, they were the English champions. They won the league that year. They were the best team in the country. And they were for many years. You know, they had a great team, Burnley. And it was sad when they went down, you know, politics and whatever. And without going into the whole story about Bob Lord and all the strange things he did. You know, they had great man. Harry Potts was a great manager. And Jimmy Adamson was a great manager. And I don't know the new lad, but he's doing a super job. You know, it's got great traditions, Burnley. And I hope they carry on doing very well.
The sad one of your former clubs is Bolton, in the sense that they are really struggling. It looks as if they're going to have another relegation. That's something, obviously, I'm sure you hope picks up very soon for them.
Oh, it's crazy. You know, when I joined them, Ian Greaves was the manager. And one of the sad things that didn't happen, he nearly did take over as the manager of Man United. He would have been fantastic here. He was a great manager at Bolton. And his right-hand man, George Mulhall, you know, one of the old left wingers. And they were brilliant. And we had a great team. I mean, the team was absolutely brilliant, played great football, very successful. And to see them in the way they are now is heartbreaking. You know, the Warburtons, George and Derek, who owned them at the time, the Bread family, obviously, just nice people. And, you know, all the teams around here, Bolton, Burnley, obviously United, they're all working class and working class supporters, and you want them to be successful for the people in the towns. So, fingers crossed, maybe they just need a little bit of luck and someone to come in with a few quid and buy a couple of nice players.
Absolutely, and fingers crossed, because when I was growing up, Bolton were an established Premier League club, and hopefully they can get back to that. And we're starting our shows together, Willie. Very excited about it, as I know you are too. One of the things I want to start on is, everyone knows you're a fellow Scot. How did you get to Burnley? Because amazingly, you're a player who never played in Scotland.
You know, Callum, how long have we got? Have we got a couple of days? I was going down the pits, and the only reason that this happened was that Clackmannan County, I played for Clackmannan County in the Scottish Schools Cup, and the first time in their history, they qualified for the latter stages of the Schools Cup. I think we beat, I don't know, Stirlingshire, we beat Dundee, and then we were due to meet Glasgow. And I was to leave school at Christmas. Birthday was October, and I was going down my choice was to be a priest or go down the pits. and of course I was going down the pits. And when we qualified, the schoolmaster, Mr. Campbell, came to see my dad and asked if I could stay on, so I could play for the county in the next match. I would stay on for another term. And don't forget, our school was very basic. You left at 15, went down the pits, as I said. So my dad said no, and then the following day, the priest arrived at the door and had the same request. And of course, my dad said, "Oh yes, okay, you can stay on." And then, having stayed on, we played Glasgow, and from out of nowhere, all the scouts started coming. We had no idea. I mean, it wasn't like today, by the way. My ambition was to play for Socky juveniles they were in those days. And that was my ambition, because my brother had played for them. And the scouts started coming. I mean, there must have been, I don't know, 20, 25 scouts from all the different clubs, Scottish clubs, Stirling Albion, Partick Thistle, Rangers, Celtic. And then the English clubs started coming in, and they said, "Well, what do you want?" Well, he said, "If he comes for 2 weeks, and if he likes it, then he can sign." And what does he do then? And they said, "Oh, you give him £8 a week while he's here." And my dad said, £8 a week? What for? He said, "Well, that's what the young lads get." And you have to appreciate, in those days, my dad was working about 60, 65 hours in the pit face for £3.10 shillings. Don't forget, it was old money, Callum. I don't think you'll remember that. You're too young. And to get £8 was a fortune. And he said, "So he gets £16 if he comes for 2 weeks." Yeah. Okay. And then we had Man United, Arsenal, Chelsea, Blackpool, Newcastle. And so they worked it out and said, "Well, if you go to all these places for 2 weeks, we'll be millionaires. Then come back and sign for Celtic." Because that's what my dad wanted me to do. So that was the plan. And Burnley, I'd never heard of Burnley, but they were at the top of the English League. When the scout came, he was called Jimmy Steen. He's from Whitburn. And he said, "We'd like him to come down." So I went to Burnley first. Then I was going, from Burnley, United, and then London, and back up, Blackpool, Newcastle, and back home. And I chipped a bone in my toe when I was at Burnley. And I was there for 6 weeks, because obviously I couldn't walk. I had a big bandage on it. I couldn't put a plaster on it, but I had a bandage on it. And they were so nice. They were so kind. And at the end of it, the scout went through. They asked me, they said, "Will you sign?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'd like to sign." And so we didn't have a phone at home, don't forget. There was no phones in the village, no TV, never mind a phone. So the scout went through to my dad and said, "Oh, William's going to sign. Can you come to England?" He said, "No, he can't. He's not signing for you. He's coming home." He said, "Well, they said he would." Anyway, cut a long story short, I did. My dad came down, I signed for Burnley. They won the championship that year. And of course, the rest is history. I broke into the first team when I was 18, which was unusual. We had 5 teams in those days, Callum, and you started in the 5th team. And of course, the Colts, as they were called, B team, the A team, reserve team, the first team. So they all had a right winger and all had a left winger. So quite a lot of people to get past. Anyway, I did it. Normally, again, back in those days, you look to get into the first team when you're about 24, 25-year-old. And at 18, I just turned 18 and made my debut, which was unusual. And of course, then, rest is history. I had great times there. I liked Harry Potts very much. And we had a great team.
You
So
mentioned
that's how it started. So we didn't become millionaires, by the way. So my dad never forgave me. He never forgave me for not being Celtic either.
I was going to say that. So the plan was become millionaires, get to Celtic. Instead,
Yeah.
you stay at Burnley. You're doing well at Burnley. How do you sum up that first spell there? Because ultimately it leads to a move to Manchester United and Sir Matt.
Well, obviously we played against United on many occasions, and I think it was we played them at Turf Moor, and we beat them 6-1 or something. And I made 4 goals for Andy Lochhead, and I scored the other 2, which is unusual because I didn't score many goals. And afterwards, obviously I didn't know at the time, but after I signed for them, Matt said that, I've been trying to get you ever since that game. I wanted you here at Old Trafford. And then when I got into confrontation with Burnley, when I was trying to sign a new contract, and then that's when Bob Lord reared his ugly head, and I ended up going to United. I was actually going to go to Leeds. John Revie had come over, and I was going to go to Leeds, and then Matt came in, and I decided to go to United.
In terms of Matt, what was it like when you met him and spoke to him about his plans for you and United?
It wasn't like that. The guy, I was playing golf. I lived in a place called Bacup at the time, and I was up in the golf course, and it was I don't know, about 5:30, 6 o'clock. It was going dark, and I saw the guy. It was only me in the course. It was on a 9-hole course, and the last hole was a par 3. And I saw the guy in the overcoat and a trilby coming up, and I thought, "Hello, Bob Ross sent somebody to get me." So I whipped out my bloody wedge, and yeah, I walked him down. So I said, "Excuse me, what do you want?" He said, "Can I have a word with you?" I said, "Yeah, go on." And he said, "Well, I've come from Matt Busby. He sent me down to ask me if you could come and meet him." And I said, "Oh, okay." And that's how. And then I went through on the Friday night and went in. Jimmy Murphy met me and took me out and looked at the stadium. The lights were on, and he said, "Look at that, son." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Now get in there and get signing." Then I went in, and the gaffer, Matt, was sat at his desk in his little office. And it was like meeting your dad. It was like sitting in front of your dad. And at the time, so he said, and don't forget, there's no agents in those days, Callum. They hadn't been heard of yet. And he asked me, he said, "I've been after you for a long time. We've agreed a fee, 117,000 for Burnley. And would you like to come here?" And I said, and don't forget, I'd already agreed with Don Revie that I'd go to Leeds because they were going to give me a bum. So I said, "Yes, of course." He said, "Is there anything you want to ask me?" And I thought, I should ask him how much he's going to pay me. And I said, "No, everything's fine. Everything's fine." And he said, "Okay." He said, "Can you come back tomorrow? We'll prepare the contracts. And if you can come back tomorrow and sign the contracts." And they were playing Chelsea at Old Trafford on that Saturday. And I went through. Can you see me, Callum?
I can't see you. I can still hear you. It's okay.
I went through on the Saturday about 11 o'clock. And he said, "Look, all the contracts are here. Anything you want to ask me?" I said, "Well, I like the number 7 shirt." He said, "Okay, you've got a number 7 shirt." I said, "Well, I'd like a detached house, a clubhouse, don't forget, because we couldn't afford to buy a house, we didn't have any money." And he said, "Okay, that's okay. Anything else?" I thought, how do I ask him how much they're going to pay me? So I said, no, everything's fine. He said, would you like to stay and watch the match? I said, well, actually, I'm playing golf at 2:00. That's true. And he said, okay, well, we'll see you Monday morning if you come here. And I thought they were going to give me a copy of the contract. So, and obviously my plan was to look at it, see what they're going to pay me. Anyway, they didn't. I signed 5 copies of this because they had to go away and get ratified or whatever they do with them. And they said, oh, you get your contract on Monday. I said, oh, okay. And that was it. I signed for Man U. They actually got beat 4-0 that day by Chelsea at Old Trafford. So I made my debut on the Wednesday against Spurs. Oh, Cyril Knowles was left back. And we won, and, you know, it was fantastic. The crowd were amazing towards me. But I hadn't trained. Burnley wouldn't let me train all the pre-season because I was out of contract, and they wouldn't let me train. So I just played golf all summer. So I wasn't actually fit. But anyway, I played, and, you know, it worked out really well for me. It was fantastic. It was obviously it's a great club. And the players, the biggest thing for me was, you know, meeting Paddy Crerand, because obviously being a Celtic fan, I was a big Crerand fan. And they were just great, all of them. Every single player was fantastic. The guy that I didn't like was Nobby Stiles. And then when I met him, the only time I'd ever seen him was on the pitch, by the way. And he never got near me, but he used to kick anything, Nobby. And so when I'm going to Monday, I thought, whoa, what's it going to be like meeting Nobby Stiles? And you know something? Arguably the nicest footballer that ever walked on the planet. Lovely guy, absolutely lovely. And we became great friends. Yeah, completely the opposite to what he was on the pitch. A lovely, lovely man. So, yeah, it was great. Things were fantastic. And obviously I was delighted when I looked at my contract and saw what they were paying me. Absolutely delighted. So I paid the bookies off, paid all my debts off, and moved over to Manchester. So, as you do.
In terms of asking for that number 7 jersey, were you ever nervous at all about getting the number 7 jersey, considering the history of it?
No, the only person I knew, the person that wore it was George. Bestie wore number 7. I didn't know anybody that wore it prior to that. And I just said, I like number 7 shirt. She said, all right, George will play number 11. And he wore the number 11 shirt for the rest of his career at Man U. But we become great friends. You know, there was no animosity, there was no nothing, there was no... We become really, really great friends.
That leads me on to the first of our listeners' questions. This has been asked by Shane Monaghan through the Lemur app. He is asking, funnily enough, on the same topic about George. He said, what was it like playing with George, and what was he like on and off the field?
What was it like playing with George? It was like, I mean, obviously he played in the left wing. I'm out in the right wing. But, you know, the amount of passes I got from George, in those days, it would be a left half position. It would be left midfield. Now, George would pick the ball up from Tony Dunn, and he would hit a cross-field pass to me and let me get on with it. It was just great playing in the team. I mean, the team was fantastic. You know, Paddy, Bobby Charlton, Dennis Law, Brian Kidd, Georgie, of course. It was a great Tony Dunn. We were talking about Tony earlier. And the other fullback, funnily enough, was called Shea as well, Shea Brennan. They were both Irish, Southern Irish lads. It was just a great team and a great feeling. As wonderful as Burnley was and the supporters were, walking out of Old Trafford, 63,500 people singing your name was an amazing feeling. So George, on the pitch, great. The only, I can tell you a little story about George. Eventually, this is much, much later, when Frank Farrell was manager, George got sent off. We were playing Chelsea at Chelsea. And the referee, I can't remember his name, I'm sure he was Welsh. I'm trying to think of his name now, Callum. Anyway, he gave a diabolical decision in favour of Chelsea when they scored. And they went 1-0 up. And Bestie gave him a mouthful. And I obviously can't repeat them on your podcast, Callum, the words he used. So he sent George off, got a long story short. We went on to beat them, by the way, with 10 men that night. And then Frank Farrell asked for a tribunal for George. So prior to it, he had gone to, as we went back to, this happened as we were walking back to the halfway line to line up again. So George is obviously walking back towards the left wing. Brian Kidd's inside left. Dennis is centre forward. And then you got me out on the right wing, about 60 yards from him. So he had asked Kiddo if Kiddo would say that he was talking to him and not the referee, calling him. So Brian said, no, I don't want to do that. He asked Dennis. Dennis turned it down as well. So he said, Willie, I said, yeah, of course. I said, don't forget I'm 60 yards from you. He said, yeah, I know. He said, but what can do it? So we went, this is absolutely true, we went to this tribunal. And they're like, they're dreadful. Come in, Morgan, sit there. And there are these Subutio figures on the table. And they say, well, where was Best? And I said, well, George was there. And where were you? I said, well, I was there. And you're telling us? I said, yeah. I said, I was really upset. I couldn't believe he was calling me all those names. You really want us to believe? I said, well, that's a fact. I said, in fact, we haven't spoken since, we've fallen out because I was really upset. And he got off. he got off. Because nothing he could do. And nothing he could do. So George actually got off. So, yeah, we were good pals. Off the pitch, he was quiet. He was quiet. The great myth about George Shea is that, boozer and all. He wasn't in those days. He wasn't. Of course, he used to be out. All did. But he wasn't a boozer. And it was only latterly, when he moved to London, that he started into the booze in the big time. He was very quiet. The one thing that he didn't do, Shea, that he should have done, two things. He shouldn't have left Manchester because he had great friends here, absolutely great friends. And he should have taken up golf like the rest of us. And I tell you now, he would still be here. But he was a good table tennis player, played a bit of tennis as well, snooker. And he was just very quiet. He wasn't a gambler. I mean, I used to be in the bookie shops, a few of us, but George wasn't one of them. And that was all late on in his life when he moved to London, where he must have been really depressed and in a bad way. So now, sadly missed as well. It should never have happened. Was George
a good trainer? That's something I'm interested to add to that. Was he good on the training field?
Absolutely fantastic. Absolutely. No problems at all. Never late, never thing, trained harder, as hard as anyone. Don't forget, that's all we did. We just trained to keep fit. There was no, don't forget, we didn't have coaches. We had a manager. Didn't have to tell you how to play. So all they did during the week was keep you fit. That was all they did. And in the main, he did a little bit of work and then just played five-a-sides. And yeah, George trained as hard as anyone. So he just wasn't, the trouble started much later on, Shea, when he missed the train to go to London. Well, he missed the coach from Old Trafford. It's when he moved into his new house on his own and he slept in. It's that simple. And and he missed the train to London. We were going down on the Friday. And he got the following train. It was only an hour later. And when he got there, Matt just said, just have the weekend off and we'll see you on Monday. That was all. There was no big deal, no shouting, no nothing. And that was probably this, that he had an agent by then. And, the agent was looking for a way out and making excuses. So, but no, as a person, George was great. Very quiet, very nice, great company. What else can I tell you? And a great player.
Question 2 is from John Bleasdale. He's asking, Willie, who would you like to have played under more, Brian Clough or Don Revie?
Don Revie. I wouldn't have played under Clough for £1 million a week. And we only earned very little in those days, Callum. Clough didn't have any great players. He had some good players, and he got them to play really good football. In fairness to him, he got the best out of them. But he couldn't handle anyone who was a name. He just couldn't handle them. He was too arrogant and too full of himself. Don Revie, brilliant manager, absolutely brilliant. And after I didn't sign for him, I was frightened to meet him again. I was dreading the first match against Leeds and seeing him. But we did meet up in Scotland, funnily enough. He used to come up to Kinross in the summertime. And we had a game of golf up at Kinross. And he said, I wish you'd have come. He said, you'd have been the last piece in the puzzle and we would have won everything. Because they were a great team. Great team. And no, it's not even a question, John. Don Revie.
The next question is something we covered earlier in terms of wingers, but this is adding a different dimension to it. Rodney McCain asks, nowadays there seems to be, back when you played, there seemed to be little protection from referees. So who would you say were your toughest opponents as a winger, and just how badly were you kicked at times up and down the field by certain defenders?
Well, I didn't wear pads, Rodney. That's the one thing I wouldn't do, wear pads. So I relied on instinct and being able to ride a tackle and leap over them. They were hard, but they were slow. I've explained earlier on when talking about Tony Dunn. But in those days, they didn't go over the top. They would try to just scythe you down or, kick you into touch or whatever. But they were slow. And for people like me, most wingers were nippy and quick and, unless you got a, as you call them, a hospital ball from one of your halfbacks, where then you got caught. But, it was a hard game. It was, they were there to do a job and we were there to do a job. And I keep saying I never had a problem with any fullback. So, but there was the two best fullbacks eventually, I said, with Tony Dunn and Ray Wilson. He was a super fullback as well. But then latterly, it started. People like Terry Cooper came in. Terry was a good fullback. On the other wing, Paul Reaney at Leeds, good fullback. There was a lot of good players. But the change from being big and ugly and hairy and horrible to small and quick, which made it more difficult for us. But actually, it was just a game. In those, you took the hits and just got on with it. No one went down on purpose. Unless they hit you, you didn't go down. Even when they did hit you, you tried not to go down. Nowadays, you watch them, all you got to do is blow in their ear and they do 5 somersaults and 3 cartwheels and whatever. It's a different game played by different people.
Absolutely. It's definitely changed a lot. And the next one, the guy's not got his name attached to it, it was just his Twitter handle. At Otterman62 is saying, is there a team you particularly didn't like playing against?
A team I didn't like playing against. Everton. Everton for some reason. Not because they were a great team or anything. They were spoilers. And the other place that we didn't like going, none of us, was Arsenal, because it was a small pitch. It was very narrow. So there wasn't a lot of room for the wingers. Everything was very, very narrow. But no, in the main, every team, it didn't matter. I mean, Matt's philosophy was, yeah, you're playing Spurs, they're a good team, yeah, you'll beat them, they're not as good as you, just go and enjoy yourself. And that was the nature. I said we didn't have any coaches, we didn't need any coaching. So it was just psychological, and Matt was a master of the understatement. And he never came in at half time either. He just came in at full time and said, well played, have a nice weekend, whatever. It was a different game. As we've said many times, simple game played by simple people, made difficult by coaches now.
The question that interests me has come in from @FlatTop1968. He is asking, who was the best player you played with, and who was the best player you ever played against?
The best player I played with is someone you probably never heard of. And don't forget, playing with Bobby and Dennis and Paddy and George, they were great, great players. But the player that I enjoyed playing with more than anything was a lad called Brian O'Neill. And he played right half. And I don't know if you remember what a right half was, but we used to have a right half, a centre half, and a left half in those days. And Brian was the right half behind me, same age as me. He got into the team after me, and all he did, he'd win the ball and just feed me all day long. That's all he did, just win the ball and give it to me. He was a super player, Brian. I think he ended up going from Burnley to Southampton. I think he still lives. I know he still lives down there. So I know it's not everybody's choice, but Brian O'Neill, the best player I played against, Pelé. There's only one Pelé. He was phenomenal. He was just, there's so many great players. You have to appreciate in those days, the game was littered with great players all over the world. But Pelé was, I remember Bestie telling me, Bestie went out to America the year before me. And he come back, he said, Willie, you must come to America. He said, play against Pelé. He said, you never believe what he did. He was standing, and so he went on to waxed on about how wonderful this ball Pelé hit, 60, 70 yards from a standing thing, right to the guy. He said, it was amazing. So I went to America the following year. But I was fortunate to play against them, not with Brazil. I played against Brazil 3 times with Scotland, obviously with Scotland, and he had finished with the Brazilian team by then. And I played against him 3 times when he was in New York Cosmos. In fact, my first game in America for Chicago Sting, we played the Cosmos in New York, and it was like 90 degrees, and we beat them 2-0. And I got the MVP, if you know what that means in America, with volleyball players called. So I got the MVP for that match, and he presented the MVP to me on the pitch. All the players had gone off, and I was thinking, how can I ask? He'd given his shirt away. He'd given his shirt to our centre half, a little kid called Clyde Griffiths, and so he was better chested. So he gave me this. Then he said, I remember you from the Maracana when you played with Scott. You want to come in, have a drink, and he had his own dressing room. So I walk in, look for the other players, and he had his own dressing room. So I said, "What would you like?" I said, "Some orange juice or something." Yeah, so he got some orange juice, and he said, "I remember you, from Manchester United and Scotland." He said, "You are the number one." I said, "Yeah." So we spoke for a little while, and he said, I said, well, I've just arrived. He was asking me, I said, this, I've just arrived, and I'm looking forward to play. He said, oh, you'll love it. It's really good. And then he said, is there anything you'd like? And I said, you know, I would have loved a shirt. And he said, oh, of course. He said, can I have your shirt? I said, of course. The Chicago Sting shirt, which is number 14, by the way, because the 7 are already gone by the time I joined them. And he opened up this cupboard, and there must have been, I don't know, 100, 200 shirts home and away. Cosmos shirts, obviously. So I said, well, like a home one. So he got it out with white. I said, could you please put it on so I can say you wore it? He said, oh, I said, please. So he put it on, and don't worry, he's still sweating because it was still boiling, even in the changing room. And he put it on, and I give him my shirt, and I knock on the door, and they said, the manager said, you have to come because we've got a plane to catch, and you have to come and get changed. So I went back to our dressing room. I know it's a sad story, this, because one of the worst things I ever did. Went back to our dressing room, one of the young American lads said, he said, you know, that would be the greatest thing in my life. And I said, oh, there you go. And I gave him the shirt. I've regretted it to this day. Not that I gave it, I've regretted it to this day. I gave him Pelly's shirt. But yeah, he was in a world of his own. And all the great, even a different league, he was the greatest. Until now, there's someone on a par with him. I never thought I'd ever see it. Messi is on a par with Pelé. He's that good. So I hope that answers your question.
Next one I've got for you is actually linked to Clough again. Interestingly, this is from Peter Monaghan. He said, how highly did you rate Clough's Derby side?
They're great. They did fantastic. And say with Nottingham Forest, they did fantastic there. Clough was great with, and I don't want to say, with good players. He made good players into very good players. They played for him. I mean, and the Derby team was good. The only thing bad about Derby, the pitch was diabolical, especially in the winter. There's about 3 feet of mud. The mud came up to your knees. So it was terrible. You know, what he did with what he had was brilliant. You know, nothing against him as a manager. He did fantastic. As a person, wasn't my cup of tea, but no, it was. You know, he has some good players. He's some good players there, and he turned them into very good players. So he should have been manager of England. Glad he wasn't. They might have beat more.
Next question's one I'm interested in the answer myself here. Hugh's asking, how much would you be worth now?
How much? Well, we had I did a piece for the new movie called Busby, about Sir Matt Busby, obviously his life, and they came and filmed, and I did a piece for them, and the lad who was doing it said, at the time, 117,000 was a record fee, by the way, in 1968. That was a record fee. It doesn't sound very much now, but your wages, Callum. I mean, weekly wages, Callum. And he worked out. This was last year, like 265,000 pounds or something crazy. The same figure now. So I wish we had the wages now. I wish we had the wages then that they're getting now, but I wouldn't swap the era I played in and the players I played with to play now.
Next question is completely different. It's a question from the Omani blog. They are asking, What would you say is the best way to coach young players now? Do you think young players need to play more rather than be coached more?
I would get rid of every coach in the game. They destroy kids at young ages. Let kids play. Let them play at school. Let them play. Let them develop. And, all you need to do, anywhere in the world, go into school and ask the kids, who's the best player in the school? Callum. Who's next best? Willie. Who's next best? Jack. Kids will tell you who can play because they know. You don't. The problem with coaches is invariably the people who couldn't play themselves try to tell kids how to play. And they try to tell kids all the same things. Try to get everyone, all you have to do is watch the matches. You get a ball, go backwards, sideways. There's no flair. There's no, people say, why didn't I teach people to beat people? I said, well, because I didn't know how I was going to beat people. I just did it. There was no pre-plan, there was no coaching, obviously there's no coaching. It was instinct. And you just reactions, and that's how you beat people back in my day. Now it's so technical, and it's just all coaches. It's so if I had a child now, I tell you what, he wouldn't go near any coach ever. I'd just let him play at school, play for his local team, and then if he's good enough, he'll make it. But he'll be able to think on his own. The problem is when you get kids like that, coaches don't want them. They want people that can tell how to play. And the sooner we get back to just having a manager who picked the best team, picked the best blend, no good having 11 George Best or 11 Willie Morgans or 11 Bobby Charltons. It was a blend. You had to have your Robbie Styles, you had to have Tony Dunn, you had to have your Paddy Crown. It was just a blend. So, sadly, I don't know if there's any way around it. If you've got a kid who can play at all, how you get around not having to have them coached, because they run the game now. They've taken over the game, these people. They're just not from day one, this is not anything new. This started way back with Malcolm Harrison. Coaches, Wilf McGuinness was another one, who coaching badge. Why you can't tell people who can play how to play, and you don't know what's going to happen on a football pitch until it happens. It's instinct, and you do what you think. If I can coach you to beat someone, I can coach someone to defend against it. It's stupid. So, as you can probably tell, I'm not a big fan of coaches.
The next one is from Maggie Rhodes. She is asking, would you like to have played with Cristiano Ronaldo?
Would I like to have played with him? No. No. I wouldn't. He's a very selfish player. If he played in my era, he would play up front, nowhere else, because he's a great goal scorer, without a doubt. He's a great goal scorer. But he's not a team player. So as a centre forward, an out and out centre forward, yeah, of course, he would score 150 goals a season, because he'd get crosses coming in every other minute of the game, and he would score a lot of goals. I think he's a fabulous goal scorer. I don't think he's a fabulous player. There's been lots of great goal scorers. If you want a comparison, you look at Messi and you look at Ronaldo. They're not in the same league. Messi is in a different world to Ronaldo. Is an all-round player. But as a goal scorer, of course, his record speaks for itself. So I hope that answers it, Maggie.
Best fullback you played with? That's a question from Kevin Watson.
Best fullback I played with? Tony Dunn. And it's quite strange, really, because after I left and went to join Bolton with Ian Greaves, And Tony Dunn gave me a ball. So we joined up again. In fact, we had a good team. Peter Reid, Frank Worthington. We had a fabulous team there at Bolton. Tony Dunn was great. Even though he played on the left, he was left back, where I'm on the other side. And when the best fullback I played with as a right back was John Angus at Burnley. And that's way back in the early 60s. John was brilliant. And again, he was a fullback. He won the ball and he gave it to me. Or he gave it to Brian O'Neill and Brian gave it to me. That's how it was played. There was no such thing as the fullback running down the wing to try and cross the ball, which he couldn't. But most of them can't anyway. That's why where they are. So, by the same token, I didn't have to chase the winger back. The fullback did that job. That was his job. My job was to beat the other fullback. So you just did your job. That's all you had to do in those days, is do your job, which invariably, the centre forward, he was there to score goals. And he just hung around the box all day long. And hopefully nodded a couple in now and again. I hope you listened, Dennis.
Last question I have got for you is from Ecclestown Football Club. This is a long question, so bear with me. A lot of modern footballers struggle when they reach the end of their career. How did you cope at the end of your career? What did you do to cope at the end of your career? And what advice would you give other footballers who are coming to the end of their career naturally or due to injury?
Oh, Eccleston Football Club. It's very difficult. It's very difficult when you've been at the top. If you look back at, most of the great players didn't go on to become managers because it was by the time we were finishing, it was the advent of coaches. And you had to have a coaching badge to become a manager. And the great player wouldn't do that. I wouldn't lower myself to go and get a badge. Am I going to learn that? Or Dennis, or Bobby, or Paddy. Or George. You just didn't do that. You wouldn't lower yourself to do that. It is difficult, though, when you do finish. I had a choice to stay in America and be a manager. They didn't have a coach there, of Minnesota Kicks. And when I went to Blackpool, they offered me, when I was leaving there, Ken Chapman, the chairman, asked me if I'd go and be the manager. And I thought about it, but the commute from Manchester every day would have been too much, and I didn't want to live in Blackpool. And I don't regret not staying in the game, apart from sometimes I'd like to. It's all right, me sat here saying, "Yeah, well, coach you do this, coach you that," but I honestly believe I could take over any club tomorrow, and within a year I'll make you champions. The difficulty is that the highs, even just walking out at Old Trafford, and you had in those days 63,500 people singing your name. The highs were phenomenal. The adrenaline flow was phenomenal. And when you finish playing, there is nothing that compares with it. The only thing that saved me was golf. I played, I still do, I play almost every day. And at that time, I used to play for money. And it was a little bit of a substitute, getting a high when you're winning, but nothing can compare to it. And it's hard, so players turn to gambling to get a buzz, turn to drink to kill the pain. It's very, very difficult. Though, the one thing that I've advocated for probably 30 years now, that players, when they're between 25, nowadays you can play to 90, the pitches and the balls and no tackling and fall down when the wind hits you. There's no such injuries. Oh God, I'm trying to think how. I don't know. It's a difficult. Yeah, okay. I'll go back to 30 years ago. I advocated ex-players becoming professional referees, and you know something, you wouldn't need the cameras, and you wouldn't have the diving, and you wouldn't have the. I know when somebody's trying to do something, and they'd go off. I know when somebody's being clumsy. You know, they're not going to kid you, and a pro knows another pro. He's not going to kid. I know what you're trying to do. So for players while they're still playing to take their coaching, whatever it is, coaching, referees badge, not coaching, referees qualifications, whatever it may be, and then from the age of 30 or onwards to become a professional referee and pay them properly, and you would get a much, much better standard of refereeing. And that would be a great place for ex-players to go at the end of their career. The ones that are not staying in the game. I mean, nowadays it's completely different. I mean, we didn't earn anything like these people are earning. So most players at their end of their careers had to get a job. You know, had to go out and do something, stay in the game, or go working, or do something. Nowadays, a week's wages will keep you going for the rest of your life. So it's it is difficult, but I think you should try and teach the players that if you're not staying in the game, that you have to have something behind you, that when you finish, that doesn't leave you depressed and going into drinking and gambling, which is the hard thing. So you have to have something behind you if you don't want to stay in the game. So Eccleston Football Club, if you've any jobs, I don't know, it might be a bit old now, but you never know. We could make you champions.
Absolutely. And I have to say, Willie, that's the questions from our listeners. We've got so many more that we can ask you, but that's the questions for this week's show. It's flown in. I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
Absolutely lovely, Callum. It's nice to speak to a fellow jock as well.
Absolutely. And
there's still some of them up there. I thought you all left. I thought we were all down here.
Not quite yet, but the last thing I want to say is just to thank everyone for listening. The Willie Morgan Show is exclusive to Football CFB. Remember, you can follow Willie on Twitter at the Willie Morgan, or you can follow me at Football CFB and put your questions on there so that we can get them directly to Willie. And of course, Willie's book, Willie on the Wing, is available now. And if you order that book from www.williemorgan.com, Willie will happily sign any copies of the book. So until next time, thank you from Willie and myself for listening, and we look forward to welcoming you to the Willie Morgan Show again in 2 weeks' time.
Goodbye, everyone.